This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's one of those topics no one wants to talk about. Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Hey, Mark.
Well, not a fun one here, but a necessary one. Today we're tackling the thorny issue of end-of-life decisions, as well as what you might call after end-of-life decisions.
These are topics that, like you said, nobody really wants to talk about them. And the reality is, I don't think we need to be as afraid to discuss these issues and to tie up some of these loose ends, if you want to call them that, because quite honestly, it doesn't actually take that long, but it can make a gigantic difference when we have a loved one that's faced with end-of-life issues.
Well, in a way, that topic's been talked about a lot lately because of New York's upcoming legalization of physician-assisted suicide.
It really has, and it's really good that we distinguish between assisted suicide and just end-of-life decisions, because it's definitely not the same thing. Especially when we get into our discussion today about healthcare proxies and healthcare advance directives, really drastically different things that you really need to be aware of the differences, and then also what to do about making sure that you have some of these documents on hand.
Yeah, I know just from experience, having gone through the passing of both my parents, that the time to make those sorts of tough decisions is sooner, not later. You know, it's a cliche, but on any given day, you just never know what's going to happen.
You don't know what's going to happen when it's your time, quite honestly. And the reality is, having these documents in place is so important at relieving the pressure on your loved ones following your own passing. Because really what you're doing is you're giving directions about what you'd like to have happen once you're incapacitated to the point where you can't make your own healthcare decisions anymore. For example, let's say that you are in a terminal condition and the doctors have done everything possible. Okay, that's the thing. They're going to do everything they can to save your life. An advance directive doesn't come into play until they've done everything they can. And basically what you're deciding is, do you want to be kept alive on machines or with feeding tubes, that type of thing? Or have you decided that once they've done everything they can do, and that's the only way they can extend your life, are you making the decision at that point that there's nothing else they can do and you just want to go peacefully and naturally? That's really what this is about. It's not the same thing as assisted suicide, okay? Because assisted suicide is you deciding, I don't want to live anymore, and it could be irrespective of any terminal condition. There's a lot of nuances there, and I can't get into all of them at this point. It'd take a long time, but a medical advance directive just says that once the doctors have done everything they can to try to save your life, and there's nothing else they can do you want to stay on the machines? Let's say your brain might be functioning, but that's it. If you remember the case of Terri Schiavo several years ago, this was a big case that brought national attention to these issues because there was a fight in her family about whether she should be kept alive on machines or not. She didn't have any kind of an advance directive in place. You know, half the family wanted to keep her alive, the other half didn't. So again, having a healthcare proxy or an advance directive, and now the laws and the regulations are different depending on which state you're in. You'll have to look up, whether you're a Pennsylvania listener, Ohio, or New York. You really got to know what your state laws are. Making these decisions now really relieves the pressure and stress on your family members who are already in a compromised state because of the fact that they're losing you. It really relieves the pressure on them because they'll know exactly what you wanted.
They're both legal documents, but they're not quite the same. What's the difference, advance directive and a healthcare proxy?
Like I said, different states might define them a little bit different from one another, and I would just encourage you to get onto your state's websites and find out just what each of those documents covers. If you have a designated power of attorney, for example, a healthcare power of attorney, then they need to be aware of all of these documents. Definitely get on your websites and look to see what those differences are. Now, here's the good thing, Mark.
We could use a good thing about now.
It doesn't take that much time and effort to put these documents into effect. In a lot of cases, there's pre-printed forms that you just basically fill out, and you can actually complete some of these and have these forms in effect in half an hour. It doesn't take that long, but the time and the stress and the emotional weight that doing this now saves your family later is well worth the minimal time and effort that it takes place. It's not a comfortable topic and not really a comfortable thing to have to consider, but the reality is go ahead and do it, get those documents in place, and it will just be relieving so much stress on your family when they're grieving your loss ultimately. And it really helps to prevent fights within families that we saw very clearly in that Terri Schiavo case several years ago. So get it over with. You'd much rather go out and play with your kids or grandkids out in the yard in the summertime than have to consider this.
No, it's worth it for the peace of mind for it anyway. You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson, talking about end-of-life decisions. And let's talk a little bit about after end-of-life decisions. I mean, the things that you really don't want to talk about, like what happens to the body, headstone. Who wants to talk about that? But you need to.
And I probably view this a little bit differently than a lot of folks. And when I have clients that come into my office grieving the loss of a loved one or preparing for the loss of a loved one, I have them consider it this way. And a lot of times, normal practice is you decide what you want to have done with your body. I know there's different theological views on like cremation or being buried in a coffin in a cemetery somewhere. You know what? Quite honestly, for the believer, when you pass away, you're going to be in a place of no pain, sorrow, no grieving, no sadness, no sickness. You're not going to be all that worried about what people are doing down here with your body. You're not going to be up there thinking, oh, I'm so angry that they didn't get that one plot. Or that
you went with the cheap coffin? Come on.
Exactly. You just made my point, Mark. Thank you. You're not going to be thinking about those things where you're going to be. You're going to be in glory. You're going to be in such awe that. Consider it this way. As the family mourns the loss of a loved one, I personally think it's not a bad idea to allow them to decide, really, how do they want to memorialize it?
It's really more for them.
It's exactly my point. That it's for them. Would they like to have a headstone in a cemetery somewhere where they can go up and plant flowers and spend time on Memorial Day or on anniversaries or holidays going up there? Because really what that's doing is just, it allows people who remain here to still maintain the memories and keep their connections alive to some degree. Now, of course, we're not going to take that too far, but the reality is I think involving the family, maybe give them that freedom instead of being very rigid about, oh, you have to do this and you have to do this and this. Because the reality is if you're a believer, you're going to be in a place that, again, like I said, you don't even need to worry about that.
And as a believer, you shouldn't be afraid to dive into this stuff, honestly. Pray about it and think of others and what peace of mind you're going to give to them. Sure. I think that's probably the takeaway here.
Yeah, and I think ultimately having it be kind of a joint decision where you involve your family, it can still ultimately be your decision, of course, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but giving them the freedom to decide how they'd like to remember you. It could be planting trees. It could be setting up park benches with a memorial placard on there saying that this was donated in memory of. That type of thing. Allowing the family members to make some of those decisions helps them to process the grief and move beyond the grief. And something I want to just end by saying this too, that moving beyond the grief does not mean moving beyond the memories or moving beyond the person that was lost. That just means it's giving you the freedom to re-engage life and to appropriately, in a healthy manner, remember the person that was lost instead of carrying all that heavy grief around. That's when it gets to be problematic. So considering these things is not always fun, but at the same time, being prepared is well worth the time and effort.
Amen to that. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.